In realms draped in gold and shadowed by arrogance, there lived a king named Alistair, whose pride was as vast as his kingdom. This is the chronicle of his ascent to the heights of power and his devastating fall into the abyss of regret. High atop the kingdom, King Alistair's golden palace pierced the clouds, a dazzling monument to his own vanity. Within its opulent halls, a grand banquet was in full swing. The air, thick with the aroma of roasted boar and spiced wine, echoed with the king's boisterous laughter. He feasted, oblivious and uncaring, while just beyond his gilded gates, his subjects withered from starvation. Every clink of his goblet was a mockery to their silent pleas. Every morsel he devoured a testament to his absolute power and profound arrogance. He was a sovereign draped in splendor, yet robed in the deepest moral poverty.
A ruler whose heart had turned to stone.
Into this theatre of excess strode a figure cloaked in shadow and mystery. A seer whose eyes held the weight of ages emerged from the periphery of the court. With a trembling hand, she pointed a gnarled finger directly at the throne, her voice a low,
ominous whisper that cut through the revelry like a shard of ice.
She spoke of a future steeped in ruin, a prophecy where the king's magnificent crown would crumble to dust and his mighty throne would be reduced to a pile of rubble. The court fell silent, but King Alistair merely scoffed. With a dismissive flick of his wrist, he banished the harbinger of doom from his sight, sealing his own fate with the very arrogance she had come to warn him against. The seer's words, though dismissed, began to weave themselves into the fabric of the kingdom. A creeping famine stole the life from the fields, and a relentless plague followed in its wake, turning vibrant towns into silent graveyards. The desperate cries of his people reached the palace walls but were met with a cold, impenetrable silence. King Alistair, consumed by his own preservation, hoarded the last of the kingdom's grain and gold,
leaving his people to perish.
This callous indifference ignited a spark of discontent that soon roared into the flames of rebellion. Small, desperate uprisings were met with the king's iron fist,
brutally crushed by his royal guard.
But with every life lost, the people's hatred for their tyrant king burned hotter, forging a collective will for vengeance. Even his most trusted general, a man who had sworn loyalty, felt his allegiance waver, his heart soured by the king's cruelty. In the secrecy of night, disillusioned and determined, the general began to conspire with a rival nation, plotting the downfall of the man he once served. The storm of retribution finally broke upon the kingdom. The rival army, guided by the general's treachery, swarmed across the borders, their banners a dark promise of change. The Golden Palace became a fortress under siege, its walls trembling under the might of catapults. In the ultimate act of betrayal, the king's own guards, the very men sworn to protect him, laid down their arms and abandoned their posts. It was the disillusioned general who unbarred the great gates, leading the enemy into the heart of the kingdom he had helped build. Stripped of his power, his allies, and his pride, King Alistair was forced to flee into the dead of night. He cast off his ermine robes and jeweled crown, exchanging them for the coarse, dirt-stained rags of a beggar. His escape a desperate, humiliating scramble for survival. Now a ghost in his own land, Alistair wandered the ruins of his former kingdom. He walked through desolate villages and barren fields,
a landscape of despair that mirrored the emptiness in his soul.
For the first time, he saw the suffering he had wrought, felt the hunger he had ignored, and heard the echoes of the sorrow he had sown. He, who had once feasted on the fat of the land, now begged for a stale crust of bread. He was invisible, unrecognized, and scorned by the very people he had once ruled with an iron fist. His pleas for mercy, as unheard as theirs, had once been to him. One evening, huddled in a forgotten alleyway, Alistair, now a withered old man with the weight of his sins etched upon his face, witnessed a simple, profound act. He watched a hungry child break her small piece of bread in two, sharing it with another, even hungrier soul. It was a gesture of kindness so pure, a concept so foreign to the king he once was, that it shattered the last remnants of his pride, and there, in the twilight of his ruined life, a single tear,
heavy with the full, crushing weight of regret,
traced a path through the grime on his cheek. It was not a tear for his lost crown or his fallen kingdom, but for a lifetime of cruelty and a lesson learned far too late.